She fell from the sky, 10,000 meters, no parachute, no chance. And yet, she opened her eyes. Alive, broken but breathing, a miracle wrapped in steel and fire. Vesna Vulovic, 22 years old. A Serbian flight attendant with dreams bigger than the planes she worked on. Energetic kind, always smiling. She loved the feeling of takeoff that moment. The world disappeared below her. Flying wasn't just a job, it was freedom. On January 26, 1972, she boarded JAT Flight 367. She wasn't even supposed to work that day. A scheduling mistake put her on the plane. Fate had chosen her seat long before she stepped on board. The flight from Stockholm to Belgrade was calm, clear skies, soft winds, nothing strange. Passengers chatted. The crew prepared coffee. Everything felt normal until the unthinkable tore the world apart. At 10,160 meters above Czechoslovakia, an explosion ripped the aircraft in half. No warning, no smoke, no alarms. Just a violent roar that silenced every heartbeat on board. The plane disintegrated mid-air. Dozens of passengers were thrown into the sky, swallowed by freezing winds. The cockpit detached and spiraled away, and the section where Vesna was working the tail began to fall. Imagine falling for 3 minutes, through cold air sharp enough to burn skin, through silence so absolute it feels unreal, through fear so enormous it crushes thought. Vesna didn't feel the fall because the explosion knocked her unconscious instantly. That unconsciousness saved her from experiencing the horror. The tail section torn apart but still partly intact, tumbled like a dying bird. Snow-covered mountains rose up fast. Too fast. Then, impact. The tail smashed into a steep, forested hill covered in deep snow. Trees absorbed part of the crash. Snow cushioned the final blow. The fuselage crushed around her, but somehow preserved a pocket of survival. Her seat jammed between meal carts and metal panels, preventing her body from being torn apart. When rescuers arrived, they expected no survivors. The crash site was chaos, burning debris, twisted steel silence. But one man heard a faint sound, a breath, a moan, something impossibly alive. They found her buried in wreckage, her legs broken, her pelvis shattered, her skull cracked, 3 vertebrae crushed, her body a map of injuries. No one survives, but her heart kept going, slow, weak, but alive. Doctors later said she survived because of a rare combination of factors: the tail section creating an enclosed space, the forest absorbing the kinetic energy, the snow reducing the final impact, and most strangely, her extremely low blood pressure. It prevented her heart from exploding during rapid decompression. A deadly weakness became a life-saving anomaly. Vesna spent days in a coma, drifting between worlds. When she finally woke, she didn't know where she was. She didn't remember the fall. She only remembered boarding the plane. Everything else vanished. Her first words were a question whispered through pain. Why am I here? She couldn't move, couldn't speak properly. Her body refused to obey. Doctors worried she might never walk again. The world watched closely the woman who fell from the sky. The Guinness World Records team confirmed it. She survived the highest fall without a parachute in human history. But records meant nothing to her. She just wanted her life back. Fault. Recovery was agony. Bones had to be reset. Muscles had to relearn movement. Nerves had to wake from injury. Every breath hurt. Every attempt to stand felt like torture. But Vesna fought. Slowly. Painfully. Relentlessly. And then one day she stood. Not steady, not strong, but standing. A moment that felt as miraculous as the fall she survived. Her spirit somehow remained untouched. She laughed again. She talked again. She lived again. And when people asked her how she felt about surviving the unsurvivable, she always gave the same answer. I am grateful. I am alive. That is enough. The world called it luck, destiny, a miracle. Science called it a statistical impossibility. But Vesna didn't care what people called it. She believed she lived for a reason to remind people that even in the most violent moments, life can refuse to break. She eventually returned to work for the airline not as a flight attendant, but at a desk. She couldn't fly anymore. Her body wouldn't allow it. But she still greeted passengers, still smiled, still carried the grace of someone who had met death and walked away. The crash haunted her sometimes in dreams, in sudden memories, in silent moments. But she never let fear rule her life. She once said, if I feared death, I would never have lived. Vesna carried the unbelievable weight of survival for the rest of her life. People around the world saw her as a symbol of endurance, of fate, of impossible odds. She didn't see herself that way. She saw herself as someone who simply refused to stop breathing. Because human life, even falling through the sky, can find a way. Tao. So let me ask you this, if everything around you shattered, if the world gave you no chance, do you believe you would still find a way to survive?